Right, so we're talking about Agile. So I know some of you are in the fintech space, some of you are software businesses, but is there anybody here that doesn't know anything about the Agile way of working? Maybe like to know a little bit more. Okay, so effectively, I'm just going to give you the brief kind of two-liner. In sort of software development, there used to be a process called waterfall, where you would all get together as a business and spec a project. So if you were developing an app, for example, and you would think about absolutely everything that that app needed to do, and there'd be a hell of a lot of documentation, and then the business would leave and the software developers would go off and they would start building this thing, and then there'd be occasional touch points, and then business would be upset because it was never on time, and then at the end, they would produce this app, so much longer. So all the functionality you could imagine in this app. And by the time the app came to fruition, the whole market had changed. There were 17 other things that the business wanted in there. Things had moved on. So a very inappropriate way, really, of developing software. So a new methodology came to the fore. And an Agile methodology. So here it's like short little sprints of activity. So what's the minimum we can do in a short period of time to deliver some value, and then come back to business, and then business checks in and maybe takes it to the customer, and the customer says, this works, that doesn't work, and then you go again, and so you iterate. So it's an iterative way of working. So out of software development and slowly but surely permeating into business environments. So becoming a business model, a way of working today. So there are marketing departments that are going Agile. There are operational teams that are going Agile. There are entire businesses that are not necessarily in the software space that are going Agile. And why? Why Agile? Why are we talking about Agile in the rest of the world outside of the software development space? We're doing that because the world has got so damn complicated and it is moving so quickly. There's so much uncertainty. So everything that we knew in the past is no longer very useful for us in a future that we're unable to predict. So it's putting us into a state of turmoil. And it is so difficult to have a long-term planning process. You know, if you think about a traditional strategic planning cycle, it's really difficult to do that and to still deliver value when everything's changing so quickly. So, you know, I always think about my kids in this, you know, I just learn about Instagram or what a snap streak is, and the next minute I get an email from a kid's parenting site that says, oh, here's a new app that you haven't heard about. I've got to start all over again. And it's almost monthly. You know, that's the pace of change. You know, if you've ever worked with Google, you'll know how quickly that changes. The algorithm's changing all the time. So it's really not okay to have these long-term planning cycles anymore. So it's a bit of an uncomfortable reality that we're faced with, but it ain't going to change. The pace of change is not going to slow down. In fact, the pace of change itself is exponential. So it's changing exponentially, and the pace of change is exponential. It's frightening. So we have to figure out a different way of working. We can't keep sticking to an old industrialized kind of machine paradigm of the way of working. The business case for Agile is fairly clear. So the first thing is really around speed. Because you're able to generate more products and bring them to market faster, you tend to deliver a lot more value. You've also got much more engaged staff. So this is something we've spoken a little bit about already. John had mentioned it. When you've got engaged staff and they're working productively in these short sprint cycles and there's less bureaucracy, again, they're much more able to innovate and they're much more able to bring new, fresher ideas to market. So, yeah, we're finding that all the literature is saying that Agile is definitely delivering a hell of a lot of value. Now, it's not easy, and not everybody's getting it right. So I just want to talk to a little model, which I'm going to reference the whole way through. So if we're thinking about culture, and this sort of maps to what John was saying, we've got our values here, and then we map here to behaviors. Now, many people are writing their values in a behavioral sense. So these are the behaviors that we value. But if it's not translated to to behaviors, it's very difficult to track and to manage. And then we've got systems. And then we've got practices. And it's the gaps. It's the gaps that are problematic. It's when we have gaps that we lose trust. And that's some of what we have to manage. So I'll reference that as we go through, but really important to understand that, we need to be doing what we're saying. So I've got two messages today. We need a different kind of leadership in the organization of the future. The new way of working needs a different kind of leadership. How do I know this? I know that when I was at business school, I learned none of this. I know I'm actually coaching some business school students at the moment, some MBA students. They are learning this much of it. And in fact, what they're learning is already old. So it's quite a frightening idea. But some of the competencies, the capabilities that you need to lead these organizations are fundamentally different. That's the first point. The second point is you have to start with culture. So I'm going to tell you a little story about two businesses. It's a McKinsey case study, actually. These are two businesses in the same holding company. And they both decide to go on an agile transformation. Why? Because we need to bring product to the market faster and faster. We're not delivering the value that we need to see. And let's take that model out of software and let's put it into the rest of the business. The first business did everything right, ticked all the boxes. Okay, we're going to go Scrum, we're going to have a Scrum Master, we're going to have a coach, we're going to do this. Slam, everybody go, right? We're all in our nice little cross-functional teams, everybody go. They were doing Agile, ticking the boxes. This is what the Agile process looks like. But what happened? They hadn't worked with management. They hadn't got rid of bureaucracy. And so as a result, the managers kept saying, but where's the documentation? I'm so used to seeing all of this. I can't take that risk. How could I possibly let you guys go and develop that if there's no process around this? And by the way, you haven't jumped through this hoop and ticked that box and done all of this. So all of that beautiful work that was starting to happen was being stymied by an organization that was behaving in a different way to what they were saying. So they were saying our value is to be agile, and the behaviors were completely not that. So they hadn't worked on the behavior. And in fact, they hadn't worked on the systems because we still have a system of requiring bureaucracy, but we say we're agile. So very important to do that alignment as you go through. Company B, in the same business now, in the same holding company. They said we're going on an agile transformation, but we're going to start people first. We're actually going to work on culture. We're going to talk about what behaviors we want to see, and we're going to talk about the barriers to implementing that. And we're going to spend a significant amount of time doing that. So we're not going to worry about all of the rest of the boxes of Agile. We're just going to go in there and we're going to say, what does it take to be an Agile person? What are the competencies we need? What are the individual competencies? What are the team competencies we need? And let's go and build that as a basis so that we're building that top level and then start aligning our systems and then roll into the Agile thing. So what happened? Company B was successful. They were bringing minimal viable products to the market all the time. I think they'd produced about 60. The other business, 0. That's the extent of it. In fact, there's another stat that I read yesterday that said, if you are not focusing on your culture and your people in change transformations, your likelihood of success is 0. It's that same thing that John said. We are not machines. We are hearts and minds. We are hearts and minds. We need to be engaged that way. And if you just make us tick boxes, that's fine. We'll do it, but we'll disengage. So it's got to be a human way of working. So we need a different mindset, and working on mindsets is pretty hard. I'm going to run through these. And this is really important from a leadership perspective. Now, bear in mind, there's leaders all over organizations. So yes, I'm talking to the top, but I'm also talking to some of the middle as well, and leaders of different teams, etc. Profit to purpose. We need to be purpose-oriented. If we want these teams to be aligned and we want them energized around delivering some value to some, there has to be a purpose to it that's articulated, and they have to feel their role in it. My favorite little story about this is that I used to work for a CEO in a large retail business. And he was so excited the one day, he said, I've got this fantastic new idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get this like ticket tape thing. As you walk into reception, we have this huge reception area, many turnstiles. I'm going to put the share price up there so everyone can see it. Won't that be amazing? And I was like, no. It'll be amazing for you, but it will not be amazing for anybody else. Nobody cares. There's 1% of the people that are, fixated with the share price, and the rest of us are not interested in that. We want to make a difference. We want to do something positive. We want to make a contribution. So don't do that thing. A fixed mindset to a growth mindset. The fixed mindset is, okay, here's the market. Here's our share. Let's see how we can grow our share. Let's see what we can do. Let's beat our competitor. That's a fixed mindset. An abundant or growth mindset says there's more value to add here. What are we really trying to do? How big is the circle? What can we go and do outside of that? Where's the value we can add? So really out of the box, out of the pie, so to speak. Very different way of thinking about it. And again, that needs to come into your systems. When you're doing your strategic planning, it can't just be about taking X share from X competitor. Reactive to creative, similar. The big player in the market does X, therefore I do Y. I react. I'm continuously reacting. So this happens, I react, as opposed to going out and creating something, authoring something that isn't a reaction to something happening in the marketplace. It's a very different way of working. So what are we not seeing, would be the coaching question. Controlling to collaborative, I'm going to talk about these two together, actually managing to coaching. So this is where it gets really difficult for all of us who've managed people and who've been told that we need to, direct, control, manage, give feedback, pull them into line. That's a machine way of thinking about the world. It's absolutely, and it's an old way of thinking about the world. These are human beings. They have a limitless contribution to make. And actually, we need to start coaching them. We need to start saying, what other value, what other ideas do you have? No, I don't have all the answers. And I can't control you, because all that does is destroy your want to be in the place that you are. If you've ever, I had a micromanaging manager once. Unbelievable. I mean, the amount of time and energy he spent on looking at the scorecard and seeing how many things were delivered, and I just watched the team absolutely withered underneath that. It's not an okay way of working. It's not a human way of working, and it doesn't deliver value. So that's hard because we haven't learned another way. So we don't have the skills to do that. It's hard to sit back and ask questions. I know this. I'm a coach. I'm still learning how to do that. Sometimes I want to tell people my ideas, and actually you need to say, and what is your idea? Secrecy to transparency. That's a tough one. Many businesses feel that so much is secret. It has to be secret. We can't possibly, share this with our employees. They're going to tell everyone this is ours. But you have to push the boundaries of that, because otherwise your trust levels go down, just as you were talking about. Failure punishing to failure embracing. Also incredibly difficult. We're not taught to fail and feel great about that. It's just not a naturally human way of being. And so everybody's looking to the failures and saying, that's not okay. And in fact, doing the opposite is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Astro Teller tells the story. He's the CEO of Google X, that amazing business. And he said they had to run through a process 4 times of clapping and applauding when Google took projects off the table, until the teams got the idea that that was okay. Oh, wait, we did learn something. It's just, they haven't been fired. They're just leaving the room. They're going to come back. Because it's such a hard thing to imagine that a failure is great. So to talk a little bit about values, beyond these mindset changes, we need to have values that are agile, right? I believe that it's really important, if you're thinking about culture work, to think about agility, because otherwise the pace of change is going to leave you behind. So there's absolutely exactly what John says. You're going to get a better tenure. You're going to get a better return on your lifetime investment of your employee, or what did you call it? The lifetime return. I loved it. Anyway, it works. That works. But how are you going to deliver value in that lifetime? if everyone's constrained into a non-changing way of working when the environment is changing so quickly. It's imperative to be more agile, to stay in the game, not even to succeed, just to stay in the game. Agility is required. So how do we start thinking about these values? So there's manifestos for Agile, which some of you will be familiar with, and there's also a modern Agile set of values that comes out of a modern Agile manifesto. And it's very human. You'll see this big heart at the top of it. So these are the modern Agile values. Safety, experimenting, learning, making people awesome, and delivering value. And I just want to show you the model that I use to sort of translate this into something. Now, I don't have a slide for this because it's a natural system. So instead of it being a machine-based, and I couldn't make a pretty slide, so now I just draw it. So we've got all of these mindsets. This is our cloud at the top, right? Now we have to be thinking. So it's all of those ones I've mentioned. So profit to purpose, etc. And then we've got this foundation here. Absolutely foundational is psychological safety. Are any of you familiar with a Google study about teams? They spent millions, over, I think, 2 years. Why are our most successful teams successful? They dug into it. They thought it was personality, past performance, intelligence. They went in with all of those hypotheses. You know what they came back with? I feel safe. I can stand up and deliver a half-baked thought and nobody will criticize me. I can stand up and make a bit of a fool of myself, or I can admit to a failure and I'll still be part of a group. Why? Because belonging, because we're real, we're actually just reptiles. Our brains are still reptilian brains. We need to belong more than anything. We need to feel belonging. And if you kick me out of this group, I can't function properly. If you tell me I'm not okay, I can't function properly. I can't step out there and take risks and deliver value. So this is foundational. And then we get these values. They're kind of like the trees, right? So you know if something is wrong in one part of the system, you know these trees ain't going to grow. So we've got the psychological safety, then we've got adapt. And then we've got relate. How do we relate to others as human beings? And then we've got deliver. So those are the sorts of values, right? And with this are a whole lot of competencies that we need to, or capabilities that we need to generate. And I would argue that it's really important to start with these, particularly with leaders. So if you haven't started with this and the leaders don't know what this concept is, and they can't listen, and they can't collaborate, and they can't do the things that are necessary to build that psychological safety, you will undermine the process. You will limit the value because people will be too afraid to step out. So how do you stay open as a human being when people are bringing you different ideas? So you've got a wonderfully diverse team now, and yet you want the same. You're forcing the same because we're not safe to say something different. Then all of a sudden, your diverse team is not delivering diverse values, it's delivering the same. So, yeah, really important. This is learning agility here, fundamentally, learning agility. Can we learn, do, and respond in a circle? Learn, do, respond, learn, do, respond. And how do we get people into that mode? It's teachable. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of doing stuff. It's a practice. Very teachable, that learning agility. Do something, learn, feedback, go, 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 go. Relate. How do we relate to one? This is all about heart. This is about primarily empathy. Can I step out of my own shoes to understand your world, where you're coming from, where you grew up, the work history that you've had, whatever it is, and then deliver. Am I able to collaborate? Very important, and you should be hiring for that because some of that stuff's really hard to teach. Can I take risks? And am I dependable? Because trust comes in there. Am I actually, because that's really important for teams. So that's the sort of way that you start to develop a model that feeds on itself. It's a natural system. I'm not going to tell these trees how large they can get. They're going to grow if they've got the right things going on here, but it's often an individual journey. So that's one thing that becomes really challenging. Am I working at the organizational level or the individual level, or both? Preferably both would be my... So what did Walmart do? They said that culture is definitely the biggest aspect to make an environment more agile. So they did it right. Sorry, I don't know why that slide's cutting off a bit. But they did 4 things. They started teaching their leaders. So this is about tooling up. This is about saying, do you understand what psychological safety is? What does it mean to listen well? What are my cognitive biases? How do I give feedback? And by the way, if you put a structure in place to support the feedback, we'll talk about that a little bit now. That's really helpful. Start small. There's no way you can make an entire organization agile overnight. Find an idea. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Find a team that delivers a value stream and work with them. What does that look like in that space? How does that work? Make everybody responsible, because culture is everybody's job. John was saying that too. Set expectations. We need to know where we're going. We need a purpose and we need expectations, and invest in the training. So it is about tooling up. It's about filling those gaps, because we don't have them. We weren't taught them. Don't expect me to be able to listen, because listening is not a skill we are born with. The structures are really important. So in getting that alignment that we spoke about earlier, what are you structuring? What are the microstructures? What are the macrostructures? How are you running your meetings? Go into it, embed all of this, embed these ideas within your organization, and then focus on the systems as well. So if you don't have the purpose, work out the purpose. Get a purpose that everybody can relate to. Make sure that those are aligned. Define them and work on them. Employ coaches. It's a really good idea. Get people to start asking questions. Get a culture of question asking rather than telling. Start somewhere. So these were the points I wanted to make. It's a fundamentally different kind of leadership. It's a fundamentally different kind of way of working. It's better. It's a human way. It's very joyful. It's joyful to have people bring what they can to the workplace. And you have to start with culture. People first. Thank you.